I'm still waiting for my dashcam to record that viral footage that's gonna turn my channel into something great and famous. Until then, I'm gonna carry out the tech reviews and house automation, I guess. Hey guys, as the actual dashcam, the 70, my A810 is actually installed on my car right now, I'm gonna rely on the B-roll for this review, so I hope you're gonna forgive me. Dashcams, not the most exciting things. Last time I've made it slightly a little bit more spicier by using a sports car, but this time we're going fully practical and we're going to equip my car, which is Audi Q3. An old Audi Q3, and I'm going to outline why it's worth having one, especially if you drive in a country that isn't famous for polite driving like UK. And you can trust me, UK is full of people that should definitely reconsider taking their driving tests again. After all, it only takes a second for this instructor driver to ruin your day, and then all the options are pretty much complicated, but having a dashcam footage in your car might actually save you some money, and that small investment into a device like that will be well worth it if you're struggling to find the evidence to prove your claim that this incident on the road wasn't your fault. So when I received 70 my dashcam, which is capable of 4K recording, HDR and a couple of nice smart features which I'm going to touch during this review, the first thing that actually made me convinced that I'm going to swap my existing dashcam onto this one was the form factor. Now, my existing dashcam was on the side, mostly because it was sticking out quite a bit and I didn't want it to have it in the central of the windscreen, which caused two issues. First of all, obviously having it in the center of the windscreen would obstruct my vision, and on a corner wouldn't, so I put it in a corner, but this is the corner where the wipers aren't really covering. So during the bad weather, it's the prime time for getting accidents, right? That image wouldn't be as clear as it could have been. So having a dashcam that is much smaller, leaner, doesn't kind of get in the face, well, I was super excited about swapping it and putting in the center of the windscreen so I could actually have a decent dashcam that works in a bad weather conditions and it's not being affected by wipers not reaching to the windscreen. Apart from the dashcam itself, I also received a 128 gig card, which is nice because I didn't have to supply mine. Rear facing camera, which also you can double as an interior camera. It's all down to preference and where you're going to put it. And a hardware kit. That hardware kit enables 4G connectivity, so you could do magic tricks with it. Being capable of recording 4K and HDR isn't maybe the most flashy feature to have, but this is something I'm going to test. But apart from that, it also has a Wi-Fi, so it enables connectivity directly to your mobile. There's the associated app for that. And it comes, to my surprise, with a lane assistance. Yes, my car doesn't have lane assistance, but thanks to this camera, it actually has some clever AI going on in there that's, well, it's supposed to warn you about road dangers. We're going to go for a drive and we're going to definitely test that. It's all nice on the paper, but having the camera in my hands and going through the efforts of installation was a nightmare for me personally because I hate that. If you ever tried to fit a third-party dashcam, you know what I'm talking about. Don't get me wrong, it's super easy to stick it where you want it to be, but to hide the wires and make everything look neat, it's always a challenge. Most of the time you're going to find yourself that the cables aren't long enough and you have to get creative, and that gets annoying, and thankfully it's a process that you have to go through only once. Welcome. On my passenger seat I've got a box of goodies from 70 my, which is a dash cam that I'm going to install, and I'm currently using one from a castle I'm just going to get rid of because, well, we all fancy new toys and it's time for a change. So I'm looking forward to get rid of that and installing this. So I guess right now that's all you need to know. So let's mount this, let's go for a drive, maybe clean up my car because it's disgusting, and let's review some footage that we'll be able to capture from both of those cameras. And I'll tell you more about functionality and why having a dash camera or dash cam, it's a pretty good idea. Settings, duration, video, resolution. It's a residential area, so I'm not going to pull marquee stunts driving 95 miles per hour because that's just insane. It's 20 miles per hour in here. And that's what I'm going to drive, as you should, because, well, some of the tech YouTubers are actually responsible. I purposely picked this time of the day because the sun is setting soon. It's a bit gloomy, not enough light, and let's face it, if you're gonna have an accident on the road, which I wish you not to have, it's probably going to happen in less favorable conditions, because if everything is ideal, the road isn't wet and everything else, there are just simply less accidents. So it makes sense to test your camera in a poor visibility, poor weather conditions, and figure out if it's good enough for you. Right, if I'm gonna go too close to this ambulance, in theory, my camera should complain about it. But I also noticed it's not all the vehicles that he recognizes. I had a couple of problems with trucks, but the cars for the most part are okay. Alright, so let's investigate the car in front. Right now it's about 70 meters ahead of me, and there's no chance I'm going to see his plates. I can't even read them from the regular eyes, not to mention widescreen of the camera. So let's go a little bit closer. Okay, it's about 50 meters, and this is Y024 MBU. Mount's about 40 meters, 30.
Caution, front car.
So in here we have about 7 meters behind the car right now. And I'm running this in 4K resolution with HDR. So I have limited frame set, and it's always gonna be a challenge to figure out what you care about more. Extra frames that's gonna be less blurry, or obviously less frames with a bigger resolution that happen to be exposed a little bit more. I feel like I'm on a driving test with all those cameras and me taking care mostly to not to tip the camera at the back, but yeah, it's pretty fun. I've noticed that the car warning depends on the speed of the car as well, so it's not always...
Caution, front car.
It sounds like it says caution red car, but I think it says front car. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure about caution and car. Not 100% sure what he asks me to do about the red and the middle of that sentence. The next up we're going to go and try the lane departure, but for that I probably want to be on a dual carriageway, just to give myself some safety, because obviously that way I can change the lane safely, trigger the warning, and not get in trouble. So let's do just that. Okay, let's have a look now.
Lane departure.
That was pretty quick. I was basically moving my wheel over the center lane. Gonna try that again.
Lane departure.
Yeah, so it's purely gonna depend also on the speed in which you're changing the lanes. So it doesn't trigger at slow speeds, but like I said, it's not a system to drive your car. In odd cases when you're not paying attention, and you should be paying attention, it might just bring your attention to the road and the position of your car, and maybe just save you from that accidental damage to your car and all that trouble. So it's nice. It's a nice feature to have, but also I appreciate the fact that I can just simply turn it off. So if you're a person that is just annoyed, you can disable it in a menu and be done with it. To be fair, sticking the cameras wasn't really hard. What made me slightly hesitant was connecting the hardware kit, because it involved me probing the fuses and trying to figure out where the voltage is and how to connect it properly. Thankfully, 70mi has a really nice instructional video, and I found some guides of which fuse I could use in my car. So that overall turned out to be about half an hour job with a multimeter, connecting hiding wires and organizing everything. After which it was time to set everything up. And this is not a touchscreen model, which means it does have a nice display, but there are 4 buttons to operate and guide you through the menus, which can be slightly tedious. Fortunately, you can create a hotspot and connect to the mobile app, which lets you configure entire dashcam using your mobile. This is so much more convenient to do it this way. And now here I'm going to mention an installation tip. When I was using the hardware kit, one of the things I've noticed, it went through an upgrade first, and after upgrade it was unable to apply my 4G settings to the SIM card. It was detecting the SIM card, but the settings didn't stick and it wasn't working. It wasn't until I unbound the hardware kit and bound it again to my mobile, and then everything went into place and started working just fine. So if you run into that after your firmware upgrade, just try this. It should work just fine for you. With a bit of creativity, I think I've managed to hide all the wires and make it look decent. If I could improve on something, it would have been probably extending that USB default wire without the hardware kit by about half a meter, because it would let me actually install the camera properly at the rear port, the 12-volt port. They've included a nice charger, but since I'm using the hardware kit that comes with a USB Type-C charger built in, I've used that instead and it was great. Before I pass my judgment on the video quality, let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, dashcams aren't great at capturing details. Now, my A810 dashcam fares well. I like the image quality and everything associated with it, but there are some trade-offs. Why dashcams aren't great at capturing details? It's, well, let's face it, there are wide lenses installed in there which reduce how much density of the details you're going to get in the image. The second reason is that they usually record fast moving objects in difficult light conditions, and they have to apply a bit of compression to your video so you don't end up using your storage card within seconds. But navigates those requirements, the camera did well, and at this point I had 2 options. I had to make a decision whether I want to use 1080p at 60 frames per second. The advantage of that is that at lower resolution I have twice the frames, and the frames gonna be exposed for a shorter time, leaving me with less motion blur. Another option is go fully 4K at 25 frames per second with HDR enabled, which would probably help me in the poor light conditions. Granted, motion blur would be 2 times bigger, but you're getting a bump in resolution 4 times the resolution. So which one I ended up preferring? Spoiler alert, I went with 4K, which wasn't the setting I've used on my previous dashcam. Now, after analyzing the footage of 1080p at 60 frames per second, I discovered that unless the car was really close from the front-facing camera, I was not able to make out any rack plates, and that was slightly disappointing. Now, looking at day driving at the back camera, it's not as great as the front one because it only records at 1080p at 25 frames per second and you can't modify it, so it'll give you a nice wide angle of what's happening at the back, but without much details. You'll have to rely on the front camera for that. Now, switching over to 4K recording with HDR, I've selected HDR because there's no point of selecting 1080p at 30 frames with HDR because you're just losing quality, you're not gaining anything. I've discovered that actually you get a pretty decent recording with some details. In a good lighting conditions, I was able to make out registration plates at the distance around 15 meters, which is decent for a dashcam, trust me on that. Since nothing changed at the back camera, we can skip to the night driving conditions. This camera offers some enhanced color night vision, which means it's not going to switch over to black and white. That gives you ability to recognize the car make color if you would end up in an accident at night, which is very helpful. But when it comes to recognizing details like registration plate, 1080p was unfortunately a bit useless. I was not able to make out any details on the cars that were passing by. However, once I switched over to 4K, I was positively surprised because after the distance 5 to 7 meters, it was actually performing pretty well and I was make out the details of the rack plate, which is what you want. Now, when I switched over to my review camera, I was expecting a potato video. After all, it wasn't performing great and it was limited to 25 frames per second. But to my surprise, I was able to actually make out some registration plates of the cars in close proximity behind me, with the dip beams on. So kudos for that. If you're lucky, you actually might end up grabbing a registration plate of that car that is tailgating you, and you'll be able to do something about it should you want to. For privacy's sake, the microphone is disabled by default, but I would strongly recommend you to enable that because it's good to have an audio feedback. I know it's gonna record you singing badly songs like it recorded me, but honestly, audio quality is pretty decent. Dashcam features aside, let's talk about extra features that this camera model offers. And there's a couple of things that I kind of like. First of all, there are smart options, which means you can connect to your mobile and stream the footage with a small delay to your mobile phone. That enables you in turn to use your mobile phone as, for example, a rear view mirror, just in case you want to take a look and see what's behind you. It is possible, the option is there. Now, I already mentioned that you can set up the camera using the mobile phone itself, but there other features that it's worth taking a look at. One of the things that you'll notice that on my overlays, I have information about the speed, coordinates and date. Those are toggleable things that you can enable or disable on your recording, up to you. Those are still being recorded though. And you can look up your recent routes in the app itself. Even play a really cool animations of you going places. I can see this being particularly useful, especially if you have a 4G kit enabled, because you will be able to see it from remote locations. If you're sharing your car with your family, for example, if you give your car to your kids and you want to make sure they don't speed, and that opens up pretty cool opportunities, especially displays the maximum speed travel as well, just for your reference, and then you will be able to pull the footage also remotely. So if you have that external kit, that's a 4G kit, there are a couple of options that become enabled. First of all, don't worry about your battery life, because that kit will monitor your car's battery life, and it will deactivate if the battery levels goes too low, and you can set it up in the app. But once you have that option, you can also monitor where the car currently is using the parking location, stuff like that. You can drop in onto your car's camera and look it up from afar. So if you, for example, left your car parked in a dodgy spot and you want to make sure that it's still not being ticketed for illegal parking, you'll be able to open your mobile phone and check what's going on around your car. Also available when you have a kit at the time lapses. You can enable those when the car is parked, and it will start recording time lapses of you being parked. That can give you extra insight of all the people staring at your car and doing naughty things. Now, having that kit allows you to actually get notified whenever something happens to your car too. So, for example, as it has a collision sensors and a motion sensors, you can get notified whenever someone is too close to your car or messes about with it, and get a convenient notification on your phone. And while 70mi doesn't charge you for all those features, you'll have to face one fact. You need to have a 4G enabled SIM card, and you'll end up paying for your data plan. So if you have any joint data plans, you can take advantage of that, pop that into the 4G connectivity kit, and take even better advantage of your camera. So at this point, you probably know everything there is about this camera, so is it worth it having one? I say get a Dashcam, because you never know what's going to happen, and should you be involved in any of unfortunate accidents, it will pay for itself for sure. If you're interested in a dual camera setup, so front and back, it's around $180. The 4G hardware kit will set you back another $60. Now, that's going to be a nice promotion. Coupon code in the description, so check it out, because you'll save some money. And if you're shopping during promotional events, like for example Black Friday, you'll get it even cheaper, which creates a cool opportunity to save some money and outfit your car and feel just a tiny little bit secure. Or if not that, just to spy on your kids driving your favorite car way too quickly. Big thanks to 70mi for sending me the camera for review. You know now why this Dashcam is part of my permanent vehicle setup. So I am happy with it, and I'll be using it to monitor my driving and make sure that I'm behaving as well as the other road users. As for now, that's pretty much all. If you want to know what's gonna happen next, then hey, you know how YouTube works, you know how to subscribe, you know how to do all of that and get notifications. I'm not going to teach you all of that. But there are a couple of social media links down below, so consider subscribing to those if you want to keep up with all the latest and greatest. And trust me, you want to, because some exciting content is going to to be featured on the channel very soon. As for now guys, big thanks for watching, and I'm definitely going to see you in the next video.